Today we're going to take a look at Gandalf the Grey. This is a commander from the Lord of the Rings set. He costs blue, red, and 3 generic to cast for a legendary creature, Avatar Wizard. He is a 3/4. Gandalf has a couple things going for him. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you choose one that hasn't been chosen. You can tap or untap an target permanent. Gandalf does 3 damage to each opponent. Copy target instant or sorcery spell that you control, and you may choose new targets for the copy. And finally, put Gandalf on top of its owner's library. Now, at face value, that seems kind of meh and not that great, but when you think of ways to flicker Gandalf, those abilities then reset. Even if you flicker him on the same turn, when Gandalf comes back, or you blink him, he has forgotten the previous modes you have chosen. So the whole point of this deck is to be able to reuse his abilities as often as you can. So we have some ways in this deck to do that. Let's take a look at how we can capitalize on Gandalf's abilities. We have 11 creatures in the deck. We have Firebrand Archer for a red and a generic. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Firebrand Archer is going to deal 1 damage to each opponent. Harmonic Prodigy for 1 red and 1 generic has Prowess, which means when you cast a non-creature spell, it will get +1/+1 till end of turn. If an ability of a shaman or a wizard you control triggers, it triggers an additional time. So triggering Gandalf, it would trigger an additional time. Now, in Gandalf's instance, this means you would have to choose a different mode. It does not allow you to pick the same mode, so you do need to be careful where you're at with the modes you've already chosen that turn, because if you have no modes to choose, then you can't choose another mode. So you do have to be careful, and it is important to know it does not allow you to choose the same mode that you just chose. Kessig Flame Breather for a red and a generic. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it will deal 1 damage to each opponent. Spell Seeker for a blue and 2 generic. When it enters the battlefield, you search your library for an instant or sorcery card from mana value 2 or less, reveal it, put it to your hand, and then shuffle. Archaeomancer, which is a human wizard, which will be good if you have the Harmonic Prodigy out. When it enters the battlefield, you may return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So if this triggers twice, because of the Harmonic Prodigy, you would be able to go get 2 instant or sorcery cards from your graveyard, put them back in your hand. Archmage Emeritus is a good draw engine for us and is a wizard, so Harmonic Prodigy would see it and draw you 2 cards when you cast an instant or sorcery, or you copy. Displacer Kitten is one of our ways to blink or flicker a Gandalf. It has Avoidance. When you cast a non-creature spell, you exile up to 1 target non-land permanent you control and then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Then we have Melandor Swift Savior. It has Fly, and then when Melandor Swift Savior deals combat damage to a player, you exile up to 1 target creature you own and return to the battlefield. Soulful Mayhem Dominus is kind of nice in our deck because of some of the things that we hope to try to do with Gandalf and some big spells that we'll talk about in a minute. But if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent, or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals double that damage instead. Stormkiln Artist helps us make some mana, can get kind of big. It gets +1/+0 for each artifact we control, and it has Magecraft. Whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, we create a treasure token. We are running Thassa Deep Dwelling because at the beginning of our end step, we exile 1 target creature we control, return to the battlefield under its owner's control. We also could pay 4 mana to tap another target creature, but mainly Thassa is here to help us be able to reset and cycle through Gandalf's abilities every single turn. Sorcery spells are going to look kind of odd to you, but you'll know real quick what the deck is trying to do with some of the combo pieces that we have. So we have things like Banefire. To deal X damage to any target, if X is 5 or more, the spell cannot be counted and the damage cannot be prevented. So let's say we do Banefire for 5. Well, with Soulful Mount, it's now Banefire for 10. That's some good value and a potentially way to knock somebody out depending on where their life total is, or just take a good amount off of them. Fireball. 1 red and X. It deals X damage divided evenly, rounded down among any number of targets. Crackle with Power. 2 red and 3 X to cast. Crackle Power deals 5 times X damage rounded to up to X targets. So let's just say we were able to pump 5 mana into this. Now we're doing 5 times that amount of damage. And with something like Soulful Mount, this will knock somebody out of the game. Fending the Flames. It does have buyback for 3, so we could pay the buyback cost potentially to put it back in our hand. Otherwise, it's 2 red and X, and it deals X damage to target creature or player. Merchant Scroll, Solve the Equation are just tutors for us to help us get stuff. Heroes of the Brunin, for 2 blue and 3 generic, return up to 2 target creatures to their owner's hand, scry wrong, and the ring tempts us. So this is not bad for us. We can bounce some things. With Gandalf's ability, if we choose to copy this, we could end up returning 4 creatures to their owner's hand, help clear the way so we can get some attacks in. Instances are pretty typical. We've got counter magic, we have damage like lightning bolt, we have tutors, we have ways to bounce stuff back to their owner's hands. We are running Electro Dominance, which is an instant speed burn spell for a generic and 2 red. Electro Dominance deals X damage to any target, and then you may cast a card with converted mana cost X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. We got a couple spells that let us copy things like Galvanic Iteration. Planar Incision is here to help us flicker Gandalf. Siren's Ruse, same thing. Teach by Example, a way to copy some of our spells. Teferi's Time Twister is another way to reset Gandalf, and so is Blur. Dress Down could be a fun card for us because for a blue, 2 generic, and X, we choose one of these things, and then if we control our commander, we could choose both. Target player draws X cards, target player mills twice X cards. So let's say we have Gandalf out, and let's just say we do X is equal to 10, and then Gandalf lets us copy this. Now we can have someone mill or draw out a bunch of cards. They could draw 20 cards and mill twice X. Well, there goes most of their deck. So this could mill somebody out. It's kind of a fun way. Or if we want, we could be the one to draw some cards. Flame of Anor for a red, a blue, and 1 generic. We could choose one, or if we control the wizard as we cast the spell, we could choose 2. Likely we would be choosing 2. Target player draws 2 cards, destroy target artifact, or Flame of Anor deals 5 damage to target creature. So we could draw a little bit of cards, or we could blow things up. Either way, it's good for us. Ghostly Flicker is another way to flicker Gandalf. Stroke of Genius, either we could draw, or we can make somebody else draw. Expansion Explosion, we can burn somebody out with the explosion side. Artifacts are pretty typical with mana rocks. We do run the One Ring because this is just an overly powerful card. Especially in our deck, it's great for us. That 1 life is not that big of a deal, but the card draw is amazing. We run Conjurer's Closet in the deck so that we can flicker Gandalf and help to reset him. We do run 3 enchantments. We run Candlekeep Sage, which gives commander creatures you own, when this creature enters or leaves the battlefield, draw a card. So if we're flickering Gandalf, we get a leave the battlefield trigger and a enter the battlefield trigger. So we would be drawing 2 cards off Gandalf when we flicker him, which is good value to help keep our hand nice and full. Fiery Inscription is here for a couple of reasons. The Ring of Tempest is a hidden mechanic in this deck, but it's not super prevalent for us. But whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, Fiery Inscription deals 2 damage to each opponent, so to slowly burn our opponents out and just chip away at their life totals throughout the game. You'll notice that hidden theme in the deck with several of our creatures and things like our enchantment here to just pick away slowly, and eventually a fireball for 10 could kill somebody. And of course, because why not, we are paying Rhystic Study. We've got a couple lands in the deck that are unique. We do run fetch lands, of course. We do run things like Reliquary Tower for the maximum hand size. We also are running Auto Water, which could either be a land or removal for us. Rivendell is nice. Besides being on flavor for the deck, it allows us to pay a blue and a generic, and we can tap it and scry 2, and then we activate only if we control a legendary creature. This will help us maybe get through a pocket of lands or things that we just don't want to see. Mystic Sanctuary is likely to come in untapped, which will then allow us to put an instant or sorcery card from our graveyard on top. So maybe one of our big burn spells that we just cast, we get to cast it again by putting it back and then drawing it next time. Takastia's Dig Site, we could pay 3, tap it, and surveil 1. So we look and we don't want any lands anymore, or we just see maybe a mana rock that we just don't need. We can put it in the graveyard and then hopefully smooth out some of our draws so we can make our deck a little more consistent and be able to do the thing, which is ultimately to kill people to burn damage and burn them out with like fireballs and stuff, and who doesn't want to die to a fireball? Do you play Gandalf the Grey and have other suggestions for cards that we did not think of? Let us know in the comments below. We would also love to hear from you how this deck has functioned for you and any feedback based around this deck. Put that in the comments below. We'd love your feedback about decks.